Now, when it comes to Kendrick Lamar, honestly, I just want to say before we get into this one that I hope you are all well and just send a huge thank you to every single one of you who has been supporting me through the Drake stan smearing and everything else. And before we go any further, please leave a like, it helps me out a ton, and make sure that they can't get any of their little crash out games to work. But now with that said, I don't want to talk about that for a second, and what I do want to talk about is something that I noticed about Kendrick Lamar and the way that he closed out his tour. That, I'm sorry if you don't want to hear this, the donut place is open, and it just made me cry when I actually realized what was at stake and what was happening. And what I'm about to say here, well, isn't exclusive, you can say, because nobody else has put together that with Kendrick Lamar's closing two shows that he just did on this leg of the Grand National Tour, there was something much bigger going on than just him rapping on stage, sending messages to an industry or rivals or anything along those lines. Because, and we need to address this before we get into anything else, what I want to stop on specifically is Kendrick Lamar's Argentina show, and just with the energy, passion, and spirit that was all there. Well, when it came to what Kendrick channeled and really used to close out the tour and what he did specifically on that night though, things didn't just look the way they did because it was Kendrick being the best out right now alone, but there was something and somebody else who he was really channeling everything that he had in him for. And well, who that was the person who the last time he was out there and playing at any show in this region, which it happened to be Lollapalooza 2019, well, right before Kendrick took that stage, he lost a friend and a very dear one at that in none other than the late Nipsey Hussle. And honestly, I did not even think about this until I was re-listening to the Mr. Morale era of music from Kendrick the other day, and as I've been revisiting some of his work, well, I was listening to the Hard Part 5, and it just came to me, and everything connected full circle, as after seeing the performance, seeing how amazing it was, and it all came to me when he was rapping on the Hard Part 5, and he told us that he cried on that day before the show in Argentina, and how he lost somebody that meant so much to not just him, but of course, directly to everything that they both cared about with their shared background and the communities they were trying to build up. And so just to realize that with this run for Kendrick, while with how great it has been, he also had to revisit the place that the last time he was at, he found out that he lost one of his best friends in the rap game and just people that he knew in general. This moment of coming back here, taking hip-hop further than we have ever seen, and just witnessing Kendrick's catalog and career really all just pull together full circle at that, and the surrounding shows as a whole, well, I'm sure that Nipsey can see how far hip-hop has been taken and how his very ethos has only inspired Kendrick to go bigger and do greater. And just with that, I'm sorry if I'm getting a little emotional, but to remember that very time and how we all felt, and even seeing Kendrick perform so soon after hearing the news and just feeling him doing everything to get through one of the most difficult shows he ever had to do. I mean, this is all just so powerful to see where we're at today, and just for Kendrick in general to channel all he had to create some of the best performance moments that we have ever seen, and stuff like this just reminds me and should remind all of us of how powerful music and specifically hip-hop can be in terms of just being a universal language and way to communicate in ways that we can't even fathom the half of when it's used like this. And so I really just wanted to point that out and really just put that together because I don't think anybody else thought about it, and I guess it makes sense because of just how much other great stuff has been going on. But before we go any further, once again, huge shout out to the legendary Nipsey Hussle and his legacy, and shout out to anybody else that you may be missing today. And really on that note, the topic and theme of everything else we are about to discuss is just greatness to the highest degree. And for me, once again, with the last few days or so that Kendrick Lamar has had, it feels like in terms of his GOAT case, it has just gotten even stronger in rap, because from what he did both at the show we just talked about and then the final one for his third leg of the GNX tour as a whole, to then the huge praise and big ups and cosign that he got from arguably the greatest rapper ever alongside him. Well, overall, it just feels like with this tour we are seeing Kobe or LeBron or Jordan get out there and get that gold medal after the finals run and then gain the respect of one of the highest peers that they possibly could have. Because first off, with Kendrick Lamar's final show on this current leg of the GNX tour, I don't even have to speak. Look at this. You know what's going on. We know that Kendrick is the best in the game when it comes to this stuff, and it's not even close anymore. And honestly, when I keep seeing these videos of Family Ties, I almost want to say Family Matters, but then I laugh. But when we see Family Ties and how excited everybody is getting for this track and how it has become a bigger and bigger anthem, first off, I do love when we look back at when that track dropped, and it dropped right within the middle of that whole CLB Donda era, and Drake was trying to step over Kendrick, and there was just a lot of tension that we didn't really know the full scope of. Seeing that track by far be the song that had the most cultural relevance from that time and that still has had a long-lasting impact today, I just think that's very telling to the type of tactician that Kendrick Lamar has been. But honestly, what I also think is Kendrick is just dropping this amazing rap, which honestly I do think goes a little harder than Baby Keem's part of the track, which is saying a lot. I would love for this thing to drop on streaming, and I think it would be a great way for Kendrick to really just boost the record, although he probably won't do that, let's be real. But back to the show, when you look at the way the crowd is moving and everything around these shows, what I really do love and appreciate is that we have never gotten more living examples of the fact that Kendrick Lamar is a global superstar who is really on a run like he made the rap version of Thriller, and that no one, and I mean no one, in terms of his field and competition is doing anything close to this. And now what I will say is interesting and important to note from Kendrick Lamar and the final performance he had on this tour is that compared to the other shows, his outfit did change, and from bringing back the hat to changing up the colorways, while I don't want to be the guy who looks too much into these things, it at the very least does seem like Kendrick is teasing the next run of shows, and again at the very least where Schoolboy Q will be there, as he is wearing a hat which has all of the card symbols on them, which as we saw he wore a jacket with these same symbols during the second leg of the tour, but only once. It does seem like this is to symbolize the group that he came up with and maybe something that they are teasing, but just who knows where that's really going. But beyond Kendrick Lamar finishing up 3/4 now of the greatest tour that has been seen in all of the music industry in quite a long time, well, what else just added to Kendrick's GOAT case and shown that he is moving on a level like no other is all coming from an interview that one of rap's all-time legends and one of the most important people to the culture, even all the way to this very day in general, just said about him. Who I am talking about is none other than Nas. And now with what Nas just said about the current king of rap and from one GOAT to another, is this: Kendrick is one of the brightest stars we have ever seen. And I don't only mean superstar, I mean like the North Star. I think he's one of those, which, wow, that is some of the biggest praise you could ever get in all of hip-hop. And honestly, maybe the biggest compliment you could get from any rapper ever, but let's just slow down and continue. Out of all of these artists in this business, there's some that's not here for the art. Drake diss. When we see those people that are not here for the art damaging it, you're hurting the future of the art. So I think artists like Kendrick are going to speak out. There's a couple of them out there, younger, older, that say what they say. I think there was an Outkast video. One of those guys wore a hip hop is shirt even before I said it. I didn't see that until later. It's just been in the conversation naturally. Like any sport, you want to thrive. You don't want the NBA to start slowing down, you want it to thrive. The ball players want it to thrive. We're going to call out anytime we see it. Sometimes the rest of us won't see it. Sometimes it'll take Kendrick to remind us where we are lacking. And with that, well, first off, I'm happy that Nas has came out and been one of the few rappers, again, who has just been man enough to actually speak the truth and use his thoughts for good, which we shouldn't be surprised because, of course, in Whacked Out Murals, where Kendrick called out the rap game's disdain and silence for him, who was the only one who he said congratulated him for the Super Bowl? Of course, it was Nasir Jones himself. But seriously, with this entire comment and everything Nas said, this is really some of the biggest praise you could ever get as a rapper, and honestly, if you are trying to build a GOAT case and a GOAT resume, even compared to the Jay-Z's or Eminem's, having Nas himself say this of all people, it's probably the highest praise you can get, because really when we look at Nas and his legacy from Illmatic to how close he has stayed to the culture to even what he is doing now by getting all of these legends like Raekwon, Mobb Deep, and bringing back Big L and his unreleased music to put together albums that are honoring hip-hop legends, well, guys like Jay-Z and Eminem carry a certain level of ethos that almost takes what the principles of hip-hop are and just pushes them forward. When it comes to Nas, his greatness and superstar status is defined by being the pure embodiment of what rap was always meant and supposed to be. And so to hear Nas come out and say that he's not just a superstar but the North Star, that is literally like Michael Jordan saying that Kobe Bryant is the best player to come after him or something like that. Because to use those very words, I mean, it's very on brand for a wordsmith like Nas, but really to just big up Kendrick that much, it's so telling how much his peers respect him. And even when you just think about the circles that Nas is within, which of course he is surrounded with legends at all time, as he has spent the last year working on albums with Slick Rick, Ghostface, Raekwon, and so many others, you can really just see that between all of the rap legends and all of the people who built this culture with their very hard work and effort, it's Kendrick Lamar who's the guy when they think of new rappers today who really does just uplift their values and reflect everything that they have wanted rap to be in the best ways possible. And what I will say off of this is that we know Kendrick Lamar and Nas have always had a great relationship, as since Kendrick has came in the game, Nas has been very supportive of him. And if you didn't know, Kendrick did want Nas on his iconic and arguably his and maybe even the best rap song of all time, Sing About Me, but Nas could not record the verse in time. But what's interesting about Kendrick and Nas is that there has been a working relationship between the two really for the last year or so, as from getting that cosign on GNX to Man at the Garden being a sample and flip of Nas's iconic track and one of my favorite rap songs of all time, One Mic. We know that Kendrick and Nas have been in some sort of communication behind the scenes, and listen, with what I've heard, I'm not going to say anything because I've heard faint rumors and I don't want to ruin anything or put anything out there that then will look bad if it doesn't come true. But Nas has a lot of music coming, and there may be some sort of an appearance from Kendrick Lamar coming on that down the line, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anything more with that. But just to see two rap legends and two guys who have really represented the same thing within their own eras and done it to a greater level than anybody else ever has, right alongside a Tupac, just to support one another and for Nas to really just give him all of the approval that you could ever need in a rap game where they are trying to divide and break everything up and just ruin the culture. And as Nas is talking about, there are these new artists who don't respect the art form and don't want hip-hop to thrive and don't want the game to be better than when they found it. To see Nas, who really is like the Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell of rap, I feel like, in a lot of ways, this speaks volumes, and this is going to have pretty big implications going forward on just the way people look at Kendrick and just the way people are looking at rap and understanding everything that's going down. And with this, while it's also hilarious that Nas is pretty much calling out and making fun of the Drake lawsuit, as he is kind of countering everything he's saying to Kendrick with just the disappointment he has for that, in the greater sense, and once again, getting back to that topic of greatness. With what we just saw on tour and with what Nas just said and everything else, of course, we already know, I just genuinely want to ask and have a hip-hop discussion with everybody, so please voice your opinion in the comments and leave a like if you haven't so we can just have a bigger and bigger discussion. When do we stop the GOAT debate? Because honestly, right now, I don't think it's recency bias, but I really do think that Kendrick Lamar has just reached a point where we look at every single thing that an all-time great rapper needs and what really defines being the best. I don't know if there's anybody in the conversation with him, because just to be at this point in his career, only be a bigger and bigger superstar, never compromise anything he has done once, never drop an album that's even mid as everything is great, and then to now have some of the greatest moments of all time, like the Super Bowl, the tour, and then of course to do things like have the greatest rap beef of all time and the greatest win in rap beef of all time on your resume as well. I mean, overall, when you see some rappers who have had that GOAT potential or who are in the conversation kind of left hip-hop and haven't contributed enough to the space over time to really just cement that number one spot that they could have had. And then there's some other guys who just did way too many bad things outside of the music to ever get in that discussion again. And then you have guys like Nas who are pretty close, but they also have bad albums and they don't have anywhere near the impact that Kendrick has had on the greatest level because they were never able to take their authenticity this far. I just think it's really time where, listen, if you don't have Kendrick in your top 5 or top 3, I really don't know how you call yourself a hip-hop fan at this point. But honestly, for me, we're getting to that point where the GOAT debate is becoming a no debate. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about all of that, because really, if you have been this authentic and you can still do something like this is the very pinnacle of what rap can be. And again, when we look at what the GOAT is really leaving behind and what his legacy will be, when you realize that you're setting the blueprint forward, that if you are authentic and do things that are actually genuine to you and your story, and you're not just following trends and just losing the game, and as Nas said, making things worse than when you found them, this is what you can achieve and this is what the pinnacle of your success can be, that's invaluable. And I just think in the landscape of media and art that we are in as a whole, to be honest, just to see Kendrick stand in the face of all of that and achieve again this, again, I don't know, get to the comments and tell me who else could be the GOAT, because I really can't think of any single person who just has everything that Kendrick does. And now with all this said, let me know, what do you think about the crazy connection with Kendrick Lamar's finale of the tour and what this meant to him and Nipsey Hussle's legacy? What do you think about how he closed out the tour and his final show? And what do you think about what Nas has said and how this is just affecting the GOAT debate as a whole? I can't wait to hear what you have to say about all of this, because we definitely are going to have some good conversations. And if you have not already, make sure to leave a like. It helps me out a ton, and channel memberships are live if you want to help me out there too. It really does make a big difference. Now listen, if you are here, I hope you have a great day after this, but if you want to see some more big hip-hop discussions and see how after the Drake stands kind of went off on me one day this week, well, in this crash out they had, I realized something even worse that I think every hip-hop fan needs to realize at this point. You're not going to want to miss this one. Check out the suggested video.